Well, it's Wednesday night, and Shane's looking a little different tonight. And the thumbnail had Andy Wood, and something's come up with Andy, so he can't be here this evening.
You guys got punked out twice.
Yeah. So we got John Wilburn in here to fill in for the big shoes of Professor P, and or Andy Wood. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Who all do we have in here?
Well, it's LP94 Lars, Danny Boyd, Dakota's Timeout, howdy folks, Mr. John Wilburn, Bruce Coltgen, Michael Schmidt, Colleen Tebow, Heavens Mopar 62, Colleen Tebow, well, I already said Colleen, Dizzy Izzy, Buff Del Campo, Mohawk 62, Tom Brown, Fab Race Mod Repeat from Northeast Dragway, and I think Aunt D's rolled in here. Hello,
Dizzy Izzy's here.
Yeah, the Dizzy himself. We got Blue Grit Garage just showed up.
Who did register for the No Name 500, by the way.
Oh, well, it's a good deal. And I guess Friday you probably need to be there for have you had the first creator or content creators workshop?
Content creator workshop was Sunday, first one. We'll have more, but this Friday will be the live that's all about passing tech and what you will need to pass tech at the No Name Nationals.
Yeah, and Deke is going to be your guest, right?
That's right.
So if you guys haven't got to know Deke, you need to bribe him to get through tech.
Deke is unbribable.
He is unbribable. Yeah. So we got Mopars, Mustangs, and minivans. Val 360 Jimmy just showed up. And I think that's it. We're all caught up.
Here.
Yeah. Well, I've already said Colleen.
Camp Del Buffo.
Yeah. Buff is here. And hopefully Buff is not in the buff. All right. Well, it's Wednesday night, and I had the normal intro, but all right. Well, hopefully we get some tech questions in here, some tech talk questions, because it is Wednesday night Tech Talk Live.
We need a question about putting a tube in a mower tire. I'm all brushed up on that. That's what I was doing this afternoon.
I literally just got done putting some RTV on the gasket, and I'm putting a thermostat in a 350 Buick. So I'm trying to get 2 engines together for before the Buick Nationals, which is May the 15th through the 18th in Bowling Green. So I'm going to take one 350 Buick up there to sell, and then I got another customer project going together, and hopefully I can get them done.
Blue Grit Garage says he has a question, but he has not posted such question.
Sure.
He says he needs a car first at the top. So maybe the question is, where can I find a car?
That could be a tech question. Hey, see, there you go, John. I wasn't the only one thinking that. Red tire slime for mower tires.
I just put a tube in it. And the tubes in my blue mower have lasted 20 years. I bet the tubes in the white mower will too. I had this cheap Chinese tube that looked weird when I put it in. It looked like where the valve stem was vulcanized into the tube. It looked funny. And I should have stopped right there. And I didn't. And then so I'm putting another tube in it because that weird looking spot started leaking. I saw it when I put it in, and I didn't have enough sense to say, I need to stop right there.
So, you know what? I do that a lot. And doesn't it usually end up biting you in the ass?
Oh, yeah. It totally did.
Man, that just doesn't look right. Well, it's brand new. I'm just going to go with it, right?
Yeah.
And nope.
I thought it just looks weird. I guess it's fine.
Well, did you see the newest thing that's happened here recently with the Chinesium junk? Summit Racing sent out a bunch of parts.
Oh, I heard
that apparently had Brian Tooley Racing insignias written in them that were not Brian Tooley Racing. They were Speedmaster.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, and so they pulled all Speedmaster parts off their shelves and will no longer sell Speedmaster. And that's probably because they could have got them in a huge copyright infringement.
So, in other words, they probably have bootleg parts they were going to sell somewhere else like normal, and they accidentally sent them somewhere who would care.
Right, probably.
Yeah, probably. They
But if
probably
you
just
guys,
got caught.
yeah, if you haven't figured it out, Speedmaster is this like one American dude over here buying up all the Chinese parts and sell them here in the
Yeah.
U.S. And that one dude, I hope one day he kept his herpes and syphilis. But yeah, not my thing. Not Chinese parts.
Well, you wishing an Al Capone on him?
I am, yeah.
So Blue Grit Garage says, how does he get a neutral safety switch for his? He has a top loader, apparently an old Ford or something.
Neutral safety switch on a top loader on a manual transmission.
There's not a
there
neutral
isn't one.
safety switch.
Yeah. That didn't come out till like the 90s when all the millennials started driving stick shifts.
So that you have to hold the clutch in so that you put all that load on a dry thrust bearing when you start it. I never did like that, but you got the best kind of neutral safety switch there, not one.
Yeah, manual transmission, clutch. Okay, Tom Brown says, trying to get my 350 Buick to run with the Rochester 2G, already drilled 1/8-inch holes in the blades, still have to have the idle screws in 1 1/4 or 1.5 turns to get smooth idle at 900 RPM. Ideas. Oh, dude.
Something's wrong there.
Well, he's got a lot of camshaft trying to run a 2-barrel.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. If you got an 1/8-inch hole, that's big. And that's in each blade.
Maxed out.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go anymore.
No, definitely not. You sure that thing getting puking fuel to the inside somewhere?
I'm kind of wondering if it might have like, oh, you know what? There is a thing you can do. Those idle air, essentially your idle air bleed screws, you can open those up to a larger diameter. Well, okay. How do I pass tech then? You have a manual transmission.
Yeah.
A neutral safety switch is not required on a manual transmission, only on an automatic.
Yeah, you're fine. But I will say it would benefit you to come to the Tech Live on Friday because then you can have all kinds of questions for Deke. So we're preparing for that on Friday at the regular time, which is 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time.
All right. So Michael Schmidt says, here's tech, ? Valve event timing is key on a vintage engine not supported by retailers with many camshaft offerings. How do you get the most of a custom grind?
What I'd say for that is, and so you're talking about something bizarre that you don't have a lot of options, catalog options. Even if you did, there's a couple things you can do. You can either talk to Vizard or Professor P, and they may have some good ideas for you. But what I would probably do is flow the heads and then work backwards from there and get your cam.
He says, tech continued. Do people use in-cylinder pressure data sensors to determine when valves should open and close? No. Not at all.
I don't know anybody who does that.
Nope. Okay. The best thing to do is first off is you want to identify what you want to use it for, right? And then I don't know what engine we're talking about here, but I mean, if it was a motorcycle or tractor or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just, first off, what do you want to use it for? And then the second thing is, how much does it weigh? What type of carburation is on it? And what type of exhaust do you have, right? And then, on how many cylinders and all that jazz. But in cylinder pressure data is irrelevant. I would have to say that's probably irrelevant until you start trying to get every single iota of power out of the thing.
I think that for what he should do, for what he's talking about, is get Vizard's, get his cam software. His Vizard sells a cam software that'll let you put all the parameters in of whatever you're working on. Your valve angles, your compression ratio, your amount of cubic inches, all these things. And regardless of what you're running there, it'll help you optimize the right cam. And Vizard understands valve events very well. Yeah, there are a lot of people who do not.
And really, all you really need to do is you don't need the data from sensors on that. You just have to have a good understanding of what you're working on, really, right? So, I mean, if you got more compression than what's factory, that plays into it on what profile you're going to need to make it work for what you want. But that's a really broad question. They're hard to. It's
Here's another one too. What kind of engine are you working on? Because there are people that have all kinds of niches for these things that may have done a whole lot with this and can really help you get the ballpark. Like there's always some little group somewhere who's done something with whatever you're working on.
Fat Mod Repeats says Dallas no made the counterfeiter develop the runs and hay
Yeah,
fever simultaneously.
yeah. Here you go.
Let's see. Val 360 Jimmy is saying, has anyone here ever run a prefix or Mopar drag pack intake on a Gen 3 Hemi? Both are single planes. Looking for some feedback, but can't find any info anywhere. Oh, your guy to ask for that would have been Professor P.
He'll be back. That's where to ask that one.
Yeah, what I do know about the Mopar intakes for the Gen 3 Hemis is before the magazines disappeared in like 2014, I guess, 15, somewhere around there. There used to be one that was on the newsstand yearly called Engine Masters, the same name of the YouTube show I guess it'd be the Motor Trend show that you can see today. But that thing, hey, it came out once a year, and it was just really a once a year shootout, and ironically Dulcich was involved with it, and that used to be at the University or UNOH, University of Northwest Ohio, and that's where I saw them using Gen 3 Hemis, and they had one called the Tower of Power, and it was a really tall single plane. That thing really murdered it when it came to horsepower numbers. There was no such thing as too much intake manifold on that Hemi. So, but I can't compare either one. I've never seen either one of those. And I would just say, hey, find the one with the biggest plenum volume, and probably the one that would interfere with your hood. That'll make the most power. Okay.
What Michael Schmidt's working on is a flathead inliner.
Oh.
Okay, and so all the cam grinds are this 3/4 cam stuff. I'll tell you, Michael Schmidt, what I would probably do with that is if you have a good cam core, send it to Professor P, and he can find out what you can get out of it. It'll be substantially better.
Well, yeah, see, flathead stuff. I'll tell you what would probably be, and it depends what you're wanting. Is it a Ford flathead? I'm assuming it is.
That's what it looks like.
So here's what I would do. I would find who's got the hottest. If you're wanting just the hottest camshaft you can get, I'd find somebody that does junior dragster racing, and the profiles that they use on those junior dragsters, because they're limited to it, and it's not anything close to a Briggs 5-horse block anymore. But that's what they use, is a valve in block, a flathead, based off of a 5-horse Briggs. And the profiles that they use would probably be substantially closer to what you would want to run for any kind of hot rod purpose. Okay, so 38 POS Racing says, hey, Dallas, there's a local auction coming up with a bunch of 60s Buicks. There's a 61 and a 62 special. The last thing I need right now is another project car. But let's see. Michael Schmidt said he's never ordered a regrind before. This guy, Neil Elliott, says, hey, Mr. Wilburn, what happened to the old Gen 1 Hemi that you had?
That DeSoto Hemi is on my engine stand. It took me forever to get a piece of cast iron that was broken off the block, and I have it now. And so I'm going to take it to Charlie Overfelt in Roanoke, and he's going to weld that piece in, and then I've got to make a decision on where to get the machine work done. The cam core is going to Professor P, but I can only do that after I get the heads flowed. I'll need to take one to DV. So whenever I go down next time to David Vizard's, we'll try to flow the head, and that'll get things moving again. But my hang up was finding a piece of iron to weld into that block, and I now have that. And I thought it was sitting on my desk, but I just took it out and put it out there on the block about a week ago. So it's limping along, but more to come.
Oh, well, then try that Mopar drag pack one. Let's see. Oh, well, this shirt is no longer even in production, Dizzy, so you don't have to look at trying to order one of these. This was Nostalgia Modified. So we brought that back, and then it's ended up over at the NDRL. Let's see here, Dallas. I got the shipping information or confirmation from TA today for my Billet 300 flywheel. Oh yay, man, that's pretty killer. I don't have any of that stuff. I ended up buying my flywheel secondhand, which it's Billet. It's probably a TA piece. On here, hey, isn't this Ken trying to snipe your content? Watch Tall Garage for future Gen 1 Hemi content.
Ken does his thing. I think he's, Ken, aren't you working on is it a, I know it's not a DeSoto. Is it a Dodge? The little teeny Dodge Hemi?
Like the Red Ram?
Yeah, those are the smallest. I think
yeah,
that's
they're like 250 cubes, sure. Right?
Yeah, Dodge 241. That's what I thought.
That is small. Golly.
The DeSoto is more the size of a small block, and then the 392 is kind of between a small block and a big block in size.
So here's something interesting I found out with internal of General Motors, all the way up to like 1968, they had an in-house. I guess it was a rule when they built the cars until the muscle cars came out, and then in 1970 that blew it all away. But they had to have 10 pounds per every 1 cubic inch. And so that's why you see a lot of them around 350 cubes. There's a ton of 350 cubish motors, right? That's because it was 10 pounds per cubic or 10 cubic inches per. My God, what is going on?
Well, it's 320
per 1 cubic inch.
For a 3,200 pound car.
Right.
Pretty production close.
Yeah. And then so my little Buick had 215 cubes, meaning it probably had a curb weight of 2150 when they were new. So, like, you could get them down to that at least. So, I can't wait to see what this thing's going to weigh with like 9.3 rear end and a Power Brute Super T10 that weighs, I don't know, 60 pounds more than the factory one and the cast iron 350 Buick. So, it's probably going to be up there. Let's see. Fab Race Mod Repeat says those 241 Hemis are bad little dudes on a dirt track. I was always told any of the Hemis were actually pretty good.
Levi is seeing Cope wants to do it. Cope makes me want to do a Gen 3 Hemi. You already have an LS. I think that's probably the better of the two.
Chevy crime is the thing that needs to happen the most. We need to brand X swap the Chevrolets. It keeps the world in balance.
The real reason to do that is he could run a 727 and have a transmission stay together in that thing.
Well, if you ran the Gen 3 Hemi, I think that isn't the Gen 3 Hemi and you add some boost, the thing a freaking monster at that point. I mean, it's literally like the Coyote where you just add boost and the thing's just a killer.
I know that Cope's naturally aspirated with a different intake, and Cam was running 750s in a truck over 4,000 pounds. That's it.
Yeah.
And with the stock engine, the stock Gen 3 Hemi ran an 812. That was a knee driving it when an 812. With a good driver, might run a 7.
So Tom Brown's asking, any preferences for a good crisp shifters for a Saginaw 3 or 4-speed trans?
What do you want? A street shifter, a race shifter?
I think the tried and true here, the Hurst Competition Plus is probably would be ding, 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 the first one that you should run.
I might be funny, but I like the vertical gate. I think those are really
in the
nice
street
and
though,
positive.
like
Yeah, it's not bad.
Isn't that's back and forth only, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, but it's got some heavy springs and detents. It actually feels really nice and positive. You just have to lift the lever to go to first, but
I didn't know if they made one of them for Saginaw.
you could adapt it.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
You could make one. Mechanical shifters and linkage and all that is actually pretty freaking archaic.
It is, and one thing that people give up a lot in their transmissions is having that really janky, worn out factory linkage. Man, it makes them a lot nicer when you put good linkage on them. Like do heim joints and good rod ends makes all the difference.
Let's see. Well,
yeah. See, Fab Race Mod Repeat says vertical gate for 3 and 4. Yeah, I agree.
Well, what else you got going on at home, John? Are you on to any of them projects that you normally have?
Always. Been doing a lot of interesting things. One thing I don't have one here. Ooh, maybe I do. Yeah, hang on. I do actually. I do. I have one here. I have mine. I got a new piece of merch coming to and Dallas, you haven't even seen these yet, I don't think. I haven't added it yet. I've only got the first couple, and I'm going to put these on the No Name Nationals website. These.
Oh, are those for like the banner at the top of the vehicle?
No, they're just no.
Oh, that's a banner. That's a true banner.
It's a true banner with grommets, and this size banner. This size is funny. It's 44 inches, and the reason for that is because I was looking at that garage door at JB's, right? And I said, I wonder what size fits that. So I messaged JB and said, hey, JB, can you take that measurement for me? And I took a picture and put an arrow on it. Never told him what I wanted it for. He never even asked. He just gave me the number, 44 inches, right? And so a few weeks later in the mail shows up one of these. So this is a JB's garage door size banner. Exactly what this is. One section of JB's little shop's garage door.
Yeah, it'll fit anybody else's garage for sure.
Well, it'll fit whatever you want, but that's what it was sized off of. And I'm going to put these in the store. I got a couple to see how they look and sent one to JB. And if any of you want one, I'll put them in there.
Well, Tom Brown's asking Dallas, have you done anything on the S10? Yeah, I blew the transmission sky high. It lost reverse the other day, so I read something on an old forum that said if you lose reverse, generally it's the sunshell brakes. If you force it down into first gear, it will sometimes correct it. So I put it down in first gear and it blew up. So now I'm going to have to either pull it out and rebuild it myself or take it to somebody. I don't know necessarily what I'm going to do yet because I don't want to dump a bunch of money in this thing. It's a rusted pile, but it does have low miles on it. I was hoping I could get another 5 years out of the thing, but if I'm going to have to drop $1,500 to fix a tranny, that's just not in the cards at the moment.
I see Dakota's comment, George Wallace bumper sticker. You do realize that at Dallas, that was the presidential election, one election before you were born.
Before I was born?
The election of 72, Wallace and LeMay.
Against Nixon.
Hard to believe that dude was in our lifetime. Well, it wasn't actually. He died before that.
Let's see. Question: will cars ever get 13 speeds?
Nothing to mind.
An automatic, maybe. I never thought I would see. Yeah, I would never thought I would see that 10 speeds in one.
That's crazy.
Reason for it at all. No reason.
Like a bicycle. It's nutty.
Yeah, Blue Grit Garage says in the old days, if you wanted a shorter throw stock top loader Ford transmission, you put reverse gear arms which are shorter on the forward gear rods.
I
That's
can
pretty
see
cool.
that.
Yeah, it would change the entire ratio, right? So
It changes the geometry. It would make the shifter a little bit firmer to press, but it would reduce the travel.
let's see. See, Colleen is saying the same thing. 44-inch will fit on my van windshield. Do they come in transparent?
Colleen, we've already litigated that whole thing yesterday. We're all good there.
Let's see. Sweet banner, perfect for a garage, not too big, but big enough to notice it on the background for videos. Yeah. Tom Brown says, if my vehicle has 13 speeds, it will have twin sticks. So
yeah.
That's for your old school trucker guys. What's that?
Could you imagine 13? What do you even practically do with 13 speeds?
I have no idea.
I mean, it just seems to me like your clutch would be just red hot before you ever even got up to highway speed.
Well, and so Levi's saying it's for fuel mileage, John. It's to crutch up the fuel injection.
No. On the price on the banners, I don't know yet. I'm still working on that. I'm going to see what he'll do for me with X amount of commitment on them. If I committed to 100 of them, I want to know what he'll get the price to. And then once I get that number, I'm going to add just a little bit so we have something to stick in the kitty. And
that's that, huh?
Yep, that's that.
Okay.
A little bit for the event.
Yeah. Well, other than that, though, I mean, let's see, blowing up the transmission. I got 2 motors I'm working on now. Like I said, I'm trying to build one for the Nationals and then one for a customer, which is a 300 Buick. And after that, I might be back on the YouTube wagon trying to make content. I keep saying I'm going to make content, and every time I get to do that, something else comes up. So I've just been kind of jumping through my butt trying to get this 300 Buick done, and haven't had any time to shoot.
So got a lot of people wanting banners. They're good looking, and these are like literally hot off the. I mean, I've had this just a couple of days. I haven't even had a chance to show it to Dallas yet, but I had people wanting some of these, and I figured it would be better to put these in the No Name National store than risk them disappearing from the event because, those big banners are expensive, but these are going to be much more affordable. So I just need to see if I can get the price down further with a commitment on a number of them. And then, sure thing, they'll go in the store and we'll tell you.
Levi's asking if you have shirts.
They're there right now. NoNameNationals.com. The fulfillment center is literally right here. I print your shipping labels right here. I have the scale that weighs them right here. And I have boxes and I have poly bags right here. So it literally all comes from right here.
Yeah, Heavens Mopar says, hook me up with a banner when you're ready, John.
Yeah.
So, man, no questions. Well, so what's your plan this year for No Name Nationals? You going to show up in Nan's van again?
I reckon so. It gets all the gear down there.
But, well, you going to have something to race?
I can't, Dallas. I can't. I'm going to get everything together and ready in there, and we're going to have a great time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Let's see. Levi's saying I just need more content and content that gets me watch hours. So that's kind of key. It's easy to say, right? Just narrow down to that, but it's hard to do. Fab Race might repeat once a banner.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, as soon as I get a price final, I'm going to see what he'll do because there's a big difference on the brake. And what I'm hoping is that he'll let me commit to X number because I'm pretty confident we can sell so many and we'll have them there at the event. And because we're very fair and honest people, it's like shirts. Shirts are a little bit cheaper to buy at the event than to order them just because we pass it on to you with shipping, right? So you get shipping at cost on polybag, pirate ship account, absolutely nothing tacked on for handling or anything. And so you save that at the event. The same thing on these banners. We'd have them at the event. We'll also, I mean, I've scienced out shipping as inexpensively as you can do it. And I've done that part. So now what I need to do is figure out what he'll do on banners, and then we'll get it for a certain price, and then we'll put a little margin on it to just go into the, into the fund for the No Name Nationals.
Oh. Tom Brown says he tried to film fixing the fuel gauge in his GS yesterday. It took me 8 hours, so I said F28K it.
Who needs a gas gauge?
Yeah. Let's see. Levi's asking, would you race something if someone lets you? That's already happened.
Would you race? Yeah. I mean, you guys, I think I estimated that I walked about 7.5 miles just at the track, just during the event. Everywhere on that track I needed to be and things I needed to do. So I got plenty to do. I have plenty to do.
Oh, I know that for a fact.
But that said, we got a lot of other. We have more to do this year than ever before, because we might have people that need to get chassis certs. We've got people who need to get competition licenses. We're going to have, this will probably be the busiest ever. So there is plenty to do.
All right. Levi's backyard performance, Dallas. My problem is I have to time lapse everything or have a bad view of what I'm doing. Or you can just take 2 minutes of it and then just put a block that says 5 minutes later, and then you're done. Right? Through the magic of video. Twang.
Yeah.
You don't have to leave all that crap in there.
Do a minute of show and tell and a minute of time lapse and call it good. Nothing wrong with that.
Let's see. Blue Gate Garage says, tech question. I have an old Ford T10 4-speed. Will that take any power, 300 horsepower, or is it just a cruising transmission? Now, the T10s is a Borg Warner piece, and they'll take power, but the older ones, if they have the cast iron case, if it's an early one with a cast iron case, they're actually a little stronger. But I mean, I'm using a Power Brute Super T10, which was just an updated version of that that was sold over the counter. And they're like the end all be all. A lot of people still like the T10s over the Muncies. I don't know about the Ford top loader. And then
the top loader will take a lot of power.
It takes a huge beating.
Yeah, it will.
But it was built specifically to replace that T10. So, but everyone, at one point, everyone was using that T10. Matter of fact, it came factory in AMXs. It was in the vet up until they started using the Muncie transmissions. I mean, at the time, the muscle car era was built on the back of Borg Warner T10s. So
it depends who you ask too, because there are people that say, "Oh, you can't put any power to a 904 torque flight." Meanwhile, Dennis Breeden's running 9 flat in his Challenger in the quarter mile with one. I mean, it all depends what you do, how you build it, how heavy the car is. Might surprise you.
Yes, Michael Schmidt, there's going to be people that probably are going to need a competition license because the car is so ridiculously fast.
Really? You're supposed to have a competition license once you get down into the 6s. I know that Just Mopar Joe just got his competition license because his car was a little bit quicker than it should have been for that. And so what he did is he did the right thing. He got his competition license. Joe is proactive like that. He gets up on the wheel and takes care of things.
So Blue Grit, your aluminum case one, that one I'd use behind the 302, and that would be about it. Yeah. Maybe a factory stock 351 Windsor if you're just going to hang around at the drive-in.
Buff Del Campo has run one behind a 406 Ford.
Yeah, well, that's what they came with.
Yeah.
I think a 406 when it was in a Galaxy had a T10 in it. And I think they had the T10 up until they were replaced by the top loaders. So, T10 was behind big block Fords until the top loader came on. Yeah, there you go. And the top loader and the Muncie was essentially created to replace the T10, the ailing points of the T10, which is the way it's made with your main shaft and then your secondary or whatever shaft. It splits the case open first. It's just essentially splits the case wide open because it's multiplying all the torque right there, and that's what happens.
I mean, I'm a Chrysler guy, but I'll admit I think a Ford top loader is a better design, stronger than an 833.
Yeah, the Ford top loader is what a lot of them are still based on today.
Yep.
Right. What is it? The Jericho. The Jericho is based on the Ford top loader, and I want to say what are they using now? The G101, the G-Force transmission, is based on the T10. So the T10 wasn't a bad design. It was early in the era. I mean, these things were in Corvettes in like 61 too. So I mean, they were around for a long time. Transmission existed before that. It's actually based off of the T85 3-speed, which is essentially everything I can read about it is pretty much unbreakable. But the biggest problem with the T85 3-speed is the gear spread on it. Such a huge drop between each gear.
Levi, the No Name Nationals Tech Live with Deke is this Friday, as in day after tomorrow at this time.
Yeah.
8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time or 7 to 9 Central, wherever zone you're living in.
Let's see. All right. What do I need to change in a Turbo 400 to handle now 500 horse? I don't want to send it to a shop. Oh, you don't really have to do a lot to them. All you'd have to do is replace the factory clutches and steels with a good set of probably the Alto Reds and maybe buy a Transco shift kit, and you'll probably be there.
That's probably on it. I don't know on the TH400. I know those run a whole lot more pressure than a Torque Flight, but that's a good transmission.
It is. It's just by the time you take your 500 horsepower engine to hook up to it, you're going to have 475 horsepower. It's pretty much that thing's going to chew up 25 horse or so.
Dizzy, that actually sounds like it might be a pretty good deal, depending on what it is. Of course, you know, there's so many gear ratios and what kind of shape is it in and all of that. But it sounds like a pretty good price for a Lenco.
The pretty neat thing about Lencos is that they're stackable, right? So each one of them is its own gear spread. It's like 0.75. And you want a 4-speed Lenco, you get 4 of them, put them in a row. You get a 3-speed Lenco, and you want to make it a 4, put another one in between, and then you're done.
You know, one thing about those too is those gear ratios, those planetaries come in all different ratios. And so you can take that thing apart and rearrange it and change your gear spreads. It's kind of wild. I like a Lenco. I think
that's why it hung out in pro stock all the way from like 72 to probably the late 90s.
Yeah, probably no 90.
When did they go to the Liberties? Yeah,
about 92 or so, 93, right in there. Yeah. Dakota's saying how much power do you think a 350 would eat up? It would eat up less than a 400.
Yeah, it's probably only about 10, 12 horsepower, something like that. It came behind some of the smog era stuff. So, I mean, it couldn't eat up too much. But they did go to a Turbo 200 in case you wanted something that was really lightweight.
Colleen, I'm going to try to get a bulk price from our sign guy. And then once I figure out what it is, I'll put a small margin on it, and then I will let you know, and they will be in the store.
All right. How much power do you think you would save making one of those 2-speed 400s versus a stock one? I think it's probably going to be about the same amount. It may be because it's just going to be one gear lighter, right?
You don't save much because I was asking Cope about this very thing because he had one come in his shop and he says all of the stuff is still there. They really don't lighten them up with the internals inside. It's a traction control matter. It's basically a second gear leave trans brake, and all the guts are still in it.
Well, okay. Think about Turbo 400. It was never ever created to be efficient. It came out specifically. It was built by Buick in 1962, probably, and it was tested R&D for a year, and then it became the transmission, which was Super Turbine 464. It's come in everything since then. I mean, every General Motors project or product that they ever had a Turbo 400 in it. School buses, Rolls Royces, Jaguars. I mean, you list them all, and they've all had a Turbo 400. The one thing that it does have is reliability. It is very reliable, and it takes some serious abuse.
Yep.
But they are power hungry, and that's the price you pay for reliability and abusability. I've really been considering kicking the idea around of putting a Turbo 400 in my T-Bird, but I'm thinking if I do something different, it's probably going to end up being a Glide.
You put a 400 in there, it would eat up at least 2/10, maybe 3 in the quarter mile. Over a C4? I think it would.
Let's see. Levi's saying also 500 horsepower on a driver is different than 500 horse on a race car where you're launching the car very hard every pass on the strip. No, not really. I mean, the only difference is the street car would be able to spin the tires, right? But if you get your suspension set up right, it doesn't. Let's see. What's he talking about here? I want one of those SADEV sequential trans for a spirited streetcar, cleaver or FE powered, of course. I don't know what a SADEV sequential trans is. Is that a road racing piece?
Oh, the sequential stuff. Oh, that's wild. I know the NASCAR guys, they went to sequential. Now a lot of them are asking for automatics.
Huh. Oh, you're talking about like in the WRC cars? Like the rally cars?
I'm talking about the what used to be Winston Cup, whatever they call it now. So NASCAR's Premier Series is they're wanting to get away from shifting altogether. They went to sequential shifters.
Oh,
I never did like it. I never did like it at all. And they also went to the one lug nut like the Indy cars and Formula stuff.
Oh, did they?
They did that. They went to sequential shifters, transmission in the back, independent suspension. They basically took all of the DNA that was remaining of the stock car, all that little bit, and just purged it. So now
it's no longer drivers. Yeah, it's no longer drivers class.
No. Now it's just like the European stuff and all that. I don't care for it at all. And the drivers are complaining about it. But
if NASCAR really wanted to do something amazing and special, how about you put it back to like a factory car? And then it would be all kinds of amazing and special.
How about we just take the technology today, go back to the 1986 rule book and go?
That'll work.
Yeah, I'd watch that. Fab Race Mod Repeat says 1/10.5 on the four. Is that in the eighth or the quarter? Because it's significantly more than that going from a 727 to a 904. So I figure a TH400 is probably a little more power hungry than a 727 because it just applies. It doesn't ever release anything.
Well, I don't know what that's in comparison to. Is that directly from a 204R or a Turbo 350?
That's a good point.
And what kind of horsepower level are you talking?
We were talking about comparing it to Dallas's C4, and a C4 is very light and efficient.
Yeah, it's that one. That's some of the magic behind why my T-Bird runs so decent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is that transmission doesn't eat up maybe 8 horsepower.
The C4 is amazingly like a 904 torque flight inside.
Yeah. Does yours have the 904 have a boxed valve body? It's like a box. Have you ever seen a C4? Like the valve body in a C4 is like a box. It's not.
Well, yeah, the Chrysler valve bodies are the same 904 and 727. They're square and they just drop out. So they don't have like the Chevrolets where you have all the little passages that bolt onto a bunch of passages on the transmission. They're not like that at all.
Okay, yeah, C4
Yeah,
is it
it's
has like a
similar
little
to what
box.
C4 is. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
okay. I
like
was
that a
gonna
whole
say
lot.
that's what I was wondering because I've never seen the inside of a 904, but or
It's the same way.
727 for that case,
It's the same way.
But I always thought that was interesting, but because I was always GM before I got into my Fords, and then I pulled a pan off of one of those, and it's like, oh my god, what the?
Yeah. Okay, Fab Race Mod Repeat says that's for going from a 350 to a 400 and in the eighth mile. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, 10th and a half and the eighth going from a 350, 400. Yeah, that sounds right on.
So Val 360 Jimmy says, yeah, that's for street, more street than race, just a few passes on the track, then driven on the road. It'll be fine. It'll work fine. You won't lose a ton. Turbo 400. It will work every time.
Just run it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So Fab Race Mod Repeat saying it's based on a French tank transmission.
Oh my gosh.
Gotcha.
A French tank transmission. That's the first time we've had a French tank transmission come up on the Wednesday Tech Talk, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Mohawk 62 says, isn't the Turbo 400 a centrifugal shift and the Turbo 350 is vacuum shift? If you want to look at it as what the governor on the Turbo 400 is centrifugal, and then that makes it shift. Turbo 350, I don't think works off vacuum either, or just vacuum. It works off vacuum just like the Turbo 400, where the vacuum is essentially power to help make it work. But the Turbo 350 has the detent cable for the kickdown. Let's see. Michael Schmidt says, so NASCAR and NHRA purged my interest truly. They've both jumped the shark, is how I look at it.
I think that when NHRA basically killed off all the good stuff remaining in pro stock at the end of the 2015 season, there's a whole lot of people left with that. Roy and Alan Johnson left. Kurt and Warren Johnson left. A whole lot of people left and said, we're not going to start over with the fuel injection stuff. And just now, the cars are getting back to as quick as they were. It took them about 8 years to get back the time they lost going away from carburetors.
Yeah, well, now they'll start getting faster. But where would they be at today with the carburetor? That's the question. 8 years is a lot of time.
They'd be in the 620s.
Well, I remember standing at the U.S. Nationals watching Don Garlits go by in like probably the early 80s. We ran like 260 miles an hour in the quarter mile. And that was like the big deal, right? And then it was like, we'll never break 280. And that was gone within like 2 years. And then 300, that was gone within another 2 years.
What I think is amazing is what Top Fuel has done, because while they shortened up in 2008, went to 1,000 feet, so the numbers are kind of screwy. When you look at the incrementals down low, when you look at the eighth mile times, you look at the eighth mile speeds, oh, they're unbelievable. Those cars are quicker than they've ever been. It's just by going to 1,000 feet, it's kind of gotten off people's radar how much more impressive the Top Fuel cars are today than they were then. They're literally 300 miles an hour to the eighth now.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how much quicker those cars have gotten because of that.
Well, and the sad part is about the shortening it up. I knew this was going to happen. They shortened it up, and now the cars are running the same speeds they were in the quarter.
Yeah,
mile,
yeah, they are.
And they shortened it up because, oh my gosh, it's getting too fast. You did the wrong thing. They're going to get faster and faster and faster. That's what they've always done. Let's look back in history. Yep, they always went faster, right? Put a 9-inch slick on them or a 10-inch slick on them. See how much faster they'll get then.
Could you imagine driving that, Dallas? Could you imagine going from 0 to 300 miles an hour and 660 feet?
No, I did read an article though, like in probably, what was it? Probably, I guess maybe late 90s, where the cars were getting so quick off the line, people were detaching their retinas.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah. So
I'm assuming some of the pros are.
I was assuming some of that might have been from tire shake though too, But yeah, that was a thing for a while where there was probably 6 or 7 drivers that detached retinas all in the same season. Let's see here. Fab race mod repeat. NASCAR did the best thing they could do. They put them on dirt at Bristol. It didn't help. Yeah. Well, you know
They're
what?
not doing that anymore now.
When NASCAR lost its NASCAR, because it really did. I mean, like when I was a kid growing up, dude. Okay, look, Google on YouTube or just search on YouTube. There's a video where like, is it Bobby Allison and Cale Yarborough getting a big fist fight?
Oh yeah, that was in the infield at Daytona.
Yeah, and that was like, you'd think, oh, that's 1960s. No, that was like 1980s.
78.
78. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, and then you look at the Davey Allison years when you got away from the Alabama boys, and when you got away from somebody having a name like Buddy, or when NASCAR lost its NASCAR, it was no longer NASCAR. That happened around 2002.
They wanted to get away from the Junior Johnsons and the North Wilkesboro and the Earnhardt and the Southern Roots, and wanted to become national. And they didn't realize that was what gave them everything that was good.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's where their grits went away, and they replaced them with mashed potatoes out of a box.
When they started getting these corporate drivers, these jockeys who were weigh about 140 pounds, and they do all the corporate stuff, I knew right there that the handwriting was on the wall.
So Michael Schmidt asked, do any of you replace your own valve seats, polish crankshaft, bore cylinders, balance pistons, rods, or do you send it to a machine shop? The prices here for machining are crazy. Any DIY machinists? No, I don't DIY none of that stuff. If I have to replace that stuff, okay, so I've started looking at things at cost versus time. Okay, so if I need to replace a valve seat, I'll find another head. And I'll look around and I'll find another head, unfortunately. And that's the easier way to go. And your chances are, if it may have one bad valve in it, or one bad valve seat. But polished crankshafts, I do that myself. I do buy, first I have 600 grit. That's what I hit it with first, and a shoelace. And I buzzer around there pretty good and get it going pretty nice. And then I move on to 1,000 grit, and then I do 1,000 grit, and of course both of these you do with some WD-40, but you can polish them up pretty nice at home, as long as they're not too bad. Some of the hack job stuff some of the YouTubers do is just like, my God.
I've done plenty of valve seats. A friend of mine had a nice stone kit.
If you have the stone kit, that makes it all kinds of easy.
It's the best.
Yeah, and look around on Marketplace. You can find those. They're cheap. $280, and if you do 2 sets of heads, you're done.
Yeah. There are varying levels of quality. Okay, you can get like Goodson stones and get good stuff. There's also cheap Chinese stones out there, so the prices are all over the place. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And to me, what I like about the stone is it's easier to keep it concentric.
Yeah.
And doing your own valve guides with the air hammer, done those too.
I did knurl the guides at home. That's one of the best videos I have, where I knurled the guide. And believe it or not, people today don't even know what that is. And a lot of it just is due to no one does that anymore because it doesn't work well. It doesn't last forever.
Well, the one thing I've never attempted at home, nor do I want to or would even think of, is boring the cylinder.
No.
I mean, that to me is like touching the third rail.
But I have honed one out really far, especially if you just got one block with one gacked up cylinder, right? I'll hone that sucker for quite a while and try to get it. When I was hanging out with Uncle Tony, he was telling me I can get the taper out of it and all this. There's no way you'd be honing it for like a millennia with, your 3-stone home would have to be cinder blocks. There's no way that you can hone it straight. Now, and be able to tell if it was straight. That's the problem. You you can try some things. You take a die or take some dye and put it in there and then run your piston in there without any rings on it. But I don't think you're ever going to get rid of the taper on your own. Let's see.
Colleen is talking about, I'll say hi to Auto Salvage Outlaws. I see him in the chat. Good to have you tonight. But Colleen is talking about my machinist hasn't said anything about my porting job in my heads. He's doing valve seats and guides. That's probably because those are two completely different skill sets. Just because a person is good at doing seats and guides has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not he understands airflow and doing porting on a head. Not even remotely related.
Yeah, usually your machinist won't even port heads.
That's right. And
you have to take it to a head porter.
They shouldn't. That's not the same skill set.
All right. Where did you see the Auto Salvage Outlaws at? Oh, here he is. There you go. Yep, in the house. Let's see.
Yep.
Oh, Fabrice Mon Repeat sent a $20 super chat.
I see that. Thanks, man.
With a blank question. So we got to make up our own question. Let's see. Tom Brown says, used to have a farmer near us that had a deck-mounted boring tool. Would check it with a straight edge and go for it. I've seen them. All the farmers used to have that. Matter of fact, I had a crankshaft done in a 307 Oldsmobile that was same kind of machine where it magnetically attached to the rail, the pan rail, right? And that's where you centered everything off the pan rail. And they turned the crank in the car. Okay.
90% of the dirt track guys, I completely believe that too.
What's that? I don't see one.
It has a deck mount. What's a deck mount bull bar? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't doubt it. And I'm telling you, man, that crank turning machine, with the crank in the car, as long as you got the one bad rod journal, you've got it identified. You just pull both rods off of it and shove them up in the bore, and then you turn the crank. It was that simple. Pretty neat stuff. But yeah, I've seen those. They're a I want to say those are magnetic base, electromagnetic base.
2X Jeff has a Van Norman boring bar that indexes on the deck like that. I mean, it's okay. Whatever floats your boat, but to me, I would not try to do that at home. Not without the right tool, anyway.
Let's see. Fabrice Mon Repeat says Tom Brown Quickset boring bar. You can see in my FE build #1 playlist. Most of my race engines have been bored with those.
Yep, that's cool. I see Ron Ward is in here.
So Colleen, so your machinist knows how to port heads and he hasn't said anything?
Cool.
Well, I hate to say this. Might not be a good thing, because you ever heard that where your mom used to say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all? Maybe that's what he's looking at. I don't know.
We'll see.
If it's your first time porting heads, see what happens.
Did he give you any estimates and any flow bench numbers? And what heads are we talking about? Are we talking about those small block Mopar heads, Colleen? The nicest porting I've ever seen on iron small block Mopar heads is what Charlie did on those 318 heads. That Andy's putting on a 318.
Oh yeah.
They are. I think he got 240 CFM out of 170 cc runner with stock valves and stock port sizes. That's pretty amazing.
Well, mostly old parts. Ron English is here. Or Ron English. Oh my God. What is going on with me today? Ron Ward. He says, hey guys, eating pan-fried dumplings and drinking Miller High Life. Life is good. And you know what? I'm always jealous of you, Ron. You always seem to be doing something pretty easy, laid back, and enjoying yourself.
He's the voice of the No Name Nationals. as Levi correctly says.
And it's definitely Ron English is a completely different person. Ron Ward is more like Johnny English.
Hey,
Okay.
Dakota has a great recipe here on porting heads. He has a great recipe on how to get scrap value out of them. You just take a burr and make everything really big.
Hey, so we used to call that crackhead porting back in the day.
That's right. Yeah, I didn't get to see Don's port work.
Yeah, I didn't get to see it either, but I've only attempted to port one set of heads, and all I did was gasket match it, and then I went down by where the guide is, and I made it really small. And that was it for me.
Colleen's talking about the 318 heads. You talking about for that D50 Ram? Man, I would get in there. I would clean up any flash, narrow that valve guide down a little bit, make the bowls nice, clean up anything in the top side, and call those good.
Oh, Tom Brown says, Dallas, did you ever have the heads float on the heads over on Jack the Giant Killer? No. I had to have those heads welded up, and I mean like stupid amounts of welded up. I took it to a head shop in Nashville, Nashville Cylinder Heads, and that dude welded on them for like 3 weeks, weld up all the ports that were. It was on an alcohol motor, and on an alcohol motor you don't have to run water in them, especially if you got aluminum heads, and it had aluminum block and heads and a 215, and so they never ran any water. And what happened was they ended up studding the heads and the washers that you got to put down for the head studs, because you can't run the nut down on the aluminum and just mar the aluminum all up. And so you run washers. Well, they ran washers, and the washers hit the casting bumps that had the water passages. So they just ground them off and left them open. And it didn't really matter until we went to put, like the guy that I did the motor for, he put a carburetor on it and filled it full of water, and it was like pouring out. And he said it looked like my garden sprinkler when I put the radiator cap back on, right? So I'm like, oh, that's not good. Anyway, we welded them up, and the heads reported Joe Mondello in like 62, and they were really works of art. I mean, they were nice pieces, but I never had them flowed because the head shop literally had those heads for, a month, 2 months, and I was already 2 months behind schedule when they took them, right? And I took them to 4 different shops. Matter of fact, the first 3 shops said throw them away, and I said, no, man, these are legit Joe Mondello ported heads.
I see Michael Schmidt said, is the machinist on here today? Can a home job be done at home? Well, of course it can, but I'll say this. Grumpy Jenkins said in his book that he wrote in the 70s that if you don't use an automatic power hone, you're wasting your time. He was saying that then. In my opinion, there's a lot of power on the table for having a good hone done with a torque plate. I would prefer to get it done by a machinist that does it right. But you can always throw your fixed stones in there. But to me, that's just my opinion. Everybody's different.
I own them all. I own them all. I did molly rings on 302 Fords for years and years and years. Everyone used to complain about you got to have the correct crosshatch, this and that. And I would work at it. 45-degree crosshatch is what I was trying to get, anywhere between 45 and 60. And I did them all at home, and I worked on it hard. And I found that if you find a method that works for you, like when you're doing a hone, I got a 3-stone hone, and it's nothing special. It probably was a Lyle maybe from Napa. And I put my drill on number 2 on speed 2. And I have my own, once I get into the rhythm, man, and usually it will take me the first 2 cylinders to get in the rhythm. And then the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and I knock out pretty good. And then I go back to the 1st and 2nd because I have the rhythm down at that point. But and I try to get my cross hatches right, and that's that. And I put Molly rings in them, and everyone says you can't do that because you got to have correct hone. And you know what? When you're working on a budget, man, nothing beats cast iron ring and just a basic hone job. But I never used a dingle ball. I've only used a dingle ball to clean the cylinder up first, and I'll go in there with my 3-stone hone. And then I always finish them out with a 3-stone hone. And I start with the, well, I got 2 sets of stones for it. So I think the first one is like, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I want to say the first one is like 180 and the second one is 320, I think. But that's how I do them.
Now, this is more of here's a good Dallas question here at 8:03. Auto Salvage Outlaws asks, what's better, Victor Jr. or GT40 heads for your Ford?
Oh, man.
That's a Dallas question right there.
It might be, but I've never had a set of Victor Juniors. I'm not going to lie. But I'll tell you what, when I was doing, if you're talking 5-liter Ford, when I was doing 5-liter Fords, the best street combo I could ever come up with is a GT40P head on a 302 and an E Motorsports cam. It was an absolute killer. Oh, and it had to have the 1.7 Cobra rockers on it, but it was an absolute killer of a street 302.
Fabre Smod Repeat, he likes the Victor Juniors with that question. So that's his thought. He also said he did a 10-over bore with a 4-stone hone. He said, I will not be looking to do it again.
Where are you reading from, John?
I'm down here at current. I'm at 906, 907.
Let's see. Tom Brown, what grit stones were you using for the Molly rings? Well, when you finish hone it, you finish hone it with the 320 grit. And that's what I was using for Molly rings. And it seemed to be okay. I mean, Uncle Tony told me that, yeah, the first time I started them up, it blew all the Molly out the exhaust. But I mean, it never smoked. So, I mean, I don't know. They always looked pretty good when I got done. Let's see. Oh, yeah, Fabre's Mod Repeat. Once did a 10-over bore with a 4-stone Anco hone. I'll not be looking to do it again. No, it takes forever. Takes forever. I've done one out. I don't know how far I went, but I went till I got water like damage out of the cylinder.
Here's the other one. I'm thinking, if you took one 10 over with a honer, man, I bet you were checking like crazy to make sure you didn't get any taper in that thing while you were doing it.
Well, that's what I'd be afraid of.
And
right?
getting out around a little bit too.
That's what I'd be. Well, not so much out around. It'll
Taper's
actually
a big one.
Taper. It'd be so easy to put in with the home.
Yes.
That's what I don't get is like, how do people get, all right, when you hold them at home, you know, let's say your cylinder is this far, right? The problem is at the bottom of the block, you have pretty much the mains start to get in the way of the bores. And when you hone down too far with the hone, you snag one of those and it'll damn near break your hone, right?
Gosh, yes.
So what you do is you stay up away from that so you don't hit it, meaning that area right here doesn't get any freaking honing, you know, and it doesn't really matter that much, but because let's say your rings are higher up in the piston generally, but it will taper the hell out of your freaking bore.
Well, okay, a couple of things. If we're talking that kind of tech, number one, every time, let's say that you get 100 passes where it needs to be, and you get 99 down at the bottom where it still needs to be, but you're trying to stay off of those mains, right?
Right.
Well, okay, by the time you add it all up and stack it all up, you've probably added 1,000th or 2 taper in there that wasn't even there before. That's
Correct.
one.
Yeah, and majority of it's going to be in the center.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be kind of crazy, but yeah.
But I mean, you know, okay, and I guess maybe it's a bit misleading when I say I'm honing them at home. I mean, I hone them at home. There's no doubt about that. But I'm not talking like something that, well, yeah, there was quite a few of them that were 100,000 milers, and you'd hone them for a while and just throw a new set of rings in them, you know. But and I did that when I got my first set of forged pistons when it started breaking the Ford blocks. that's when I just start swapping my pistons in.
Well, the other thing too is the skirt on the piston. So let's say that you don't hone the very, very bottom to stay off of those mains. So now your piston skirt is going through a funnel at the very bottom of its travel.
That's really not the problem. You want to know what the problem is when you get the
Not
taper
really.
in the center and it starts to look like it'd be kind of exaggerated to say this, but the Coke bottle effect.
Yeah.
And then what happens is when you start the motor up and the piston starts rocking side to side,
Yeah.
right? Because the skirt's not touching anything.
Right.
And it's right there, right where the skirt's going to be. So, I mean, how that's got to be absolutely terrible on it. But, yeah, I was honing them at home, and I've never had one come back, and I've never had one that didn't have a ring seal. So,
oh goodness.
Let's see, John. It was 1,000th taper. It was round. Went down.
Yeah. Spray weld some new piston skirts. Oh my gosh.
What's that?
I see Danny Boyd talking about spray welding some new piston skirts. See, I've tried to get away from all of that kind of hackery.
Well, I don't know if it's hackery or is it wizardry, John.
Yeah, wizardry. Wizardry is the churched up term for hackery.
But Twisted Mopar Garage, you think that it generates heat in the block? Nah.
Some. Yeah.
You're lubricating it when you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, God, you should be standing there with a can of WD-40 and freaking spraying it every 2 passes.
I mean,
see, Ron Moore's best engine I ever built had 18,000 taper, 400 cubic inch big block motor. That thing revved to the moon.
Oh man, that's a lot.
And the Buicks are bad for taper because they got such a long stroke. And I've had 2 of them that were overheated and locked up, and you get them freed up to move, and they'll taper. They're tapered really bad after that. And I did the same thing: hone them, send them. So, geez, but 18,000 is a lot. But you think about it; it's in a circle, so it's only 9,000ths around.
Had knurled piston skirts in the past. Ron says.
Yeah, I've had knurled piston skirts. My first race Buick motor had knurled pistons because I had a set of 10 1/4 to 1 pistons.
Do you take any shop classes where they had you working with the knurling tools and doing any of that?
Yeah, we had. Did you ever make the little hammer with the knurled handle?
Oh, well, yeah. Run the knurler around it like that.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did that in machine class. That was wild.
Oh, see, Fabrice Mind Repeat, he said he used kerosene. I grew up using kerosene, but I found that WD-40 really cleans them out good.
Yeah.
I really like that stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I haven't tried, though? But I'm afraid to. ATF and acetone mix as a for honing. Because you know how that's like the magical, mystical lubricant or bolt freeing agent, or all of it, right?
There's always a new magical, mystical lubricant. There always will be.
I'm just afraid to hone with it because you're holding that drill and there's sparks going everywhere, and I don't know what that acetone is going to do.
Are you kidding me? We know someone who hones with a squirt bottle of gasoline, man.
Oh, I don't doubt that.
Oh yeah.
While smoking, right?
I've got a picture.
I'm sure. Yeah, when I was a kid, that's my dad used to do stuff like that.
That's literally the contact picture. I'm not kidding. And it's cool. It's whatever works for you. And if you think about it though, if you're home, and not that I'm saying home with gas, whatever, but at least then it's not like a pool of it, right? Because now that could get really interesting.
Oh, I should have told you when I went to his cookout he had one time. He came out there with the squirt bottle of gasoline, threw it on the coals, and lit them up. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And it was like boom, everybody's hair freaking stood up. And let's see. Dizzy Izzy says, when I was 14, my bro-in-law was rebuilding a 402, gave me an egg timer and drill with 3-blade hone. ATF said, do all 8 cylinders for 10 minutes each, then showed me how. Turned out fine. 10 minutes is a lot, dude.
10 minutes?
Yeah.
I'd be afraid to give blanket instructions like that, because what if you had a stone break and didn't know it? Someone honing that didn't even look for that. That could get ugly.
Let's see. Ron saying has
Knurled
also
guys.
knurled valve. I've done that as myself.
Clint's asking if there's any reason not to knurl valve guides. Well, yeah, because
They don't last long.
basically you have that much reduced surface area in there for one.
What it does is essentially, it plows the material inside there to take up the space that's missing, right? And so what happens is you end up losing half the space in your guide. So they will only last about half as long as they do for a regular guide. It was like taking your sponge and wringing it out after it was completely just mucked up. And yeah, it's halfway clean. You cleaned out half the crap. And that's what you got when you knurl the guides. It works fine. It'll keep the ring seal, but you only got about 60,000 miles and she's going to be done. Let's see. Tom Brown says, my brother's asking what is the best way to get rusted pistons out of a block before going to the machine shop. 454 has sit in water for 8 years. Okay, I had one of these. I got a motor that sat outside for 25 years. It was a 430. I ended up boring at 60 over. But to get the pistons out, what I did is I took a green. You can get a green or even a brown Scotch-Brite. Don't worry about damaging the cylinders at this point, right? And you clean the surface area as best as possible to where you can get it down to something that's reasonable. Because you want something that comes back to somewhat of a shine. Because you got to remember, you're going to try to knock those rings out. And they're going to grab every freaking extended upward pit that they can. But I cleaned them out really good and then just soaked them in WD-40 until it was actually running out the bottom. And then I hammered all the pistons. I used one bought an axe handle and cut it off, and I stuck it down in there and beat on that sucker, a hickory axe handle or axe handle. But have you ever taken some out, that John? That were?
Oh yeah, I've had some rough ones like that. I mean, to me, it's pretty much you're conceding the pistons are gone at that point. But
yeah, so we had hit on this a second ago, but is there any reason not to knurl the valve guides? Yes, all the reasons.
Yeah, I mean,
unless you're just really poor.
If you think about it, you're replacing a full complement of surface area with less surface area, so that you can get what's left back where it is. That's what a knurl's doing. It's displacing it, but it will wear out faster. It has less support.
See, there you go.
But that said, a knurl, I think a knurl is
transfer.
viable depending on what it is, and it could be a less traumatic way of saving your older heads on a vintage car that you're not hammering on. Be fine.
The way I look at it is, if you're going to drive it less than like 30,000 miles, knurl them. You know, it doesn't cost you anything.
38 is he's saying you can remove the piston piece by piece. I agree. I usually, when I've had to do that, I use an air hammer.
See, I'm trying to get. Okay, I just had a Wildcat 355 300 Buick come in my building, my shop. You know, the one I'm about to lose. And that Wildcat 355 is the high compression 11-to-1 compression Buick 300. They're rare as rocking horse shit. Okay, and you can't buy the pistons any longer. No one sells them. Not even Edge or whatever their name is. And 3 of the pistons in the motor were broke. So I took the other 5 out and I'm keeping them on a shelf. And I found another Wildcat 355 motor that was in terrible shape. And all the pistons were rusted in the block. And I'm really considering trying to take 3 of them out of that rusted to death block so I can get some, have a whole set.
Yeah, knurled valve guides keep the valve stem slathered and all. Well, this is true. A lot too. I mean, that's kind of like a compromise of the reason you're knurling in the first place. Oil control.
Let's see. Dakota says, I plan on driving my old cars the rest of my life without ever buying any post-2000 vehicles. Well, good for you, buddy.
Right on, man. I got a 2002 CRV. I have no interest in ever buying anything that the year begins with a 2 again.
Let's see. Yeah, Clint says egg. It's egg. Okay. Let's see. Knurled valve guides keep the valve stem slathered in oil. And,
worn out ones do too.
I don't know. There was something that I saw that was pretty smart on here a few minutes ago, and I looked for it again, and I can't find it. But somebody said, hey, see if they have a replacement valve that's got like a 2000s or maybe even bigger than that, larger stem. And then you can open them up. Or even go up to a 3/8 valve stem. So, and my newest vehicle is going to be my Suburban gets used every day. That's the only thing I have to drive now. My newest vehicle is a 1995 S10, and it's got a bad tranny in it, and I'm pretty much thinking about getting the one that Clint's got. It's got a 700 R4. So I might just do that.
I like some of the old school knurling stuff I've seen. There's some guys with some good knurling videos on YouTube too.
Let's see. Oh, the reamer. That's what he's talking about. Okay, so if you use a left-handed knurler, you can re-knurl the guides later. The key is the reamer after the knurling, and that's what I did. And you have to soak that knurler, the reamer. You got to soak that reamer, get it nice and slathered up to run it through there too.
I like Dakota's comment. I think my 200 horsepower Pontiac 400 is going to be very reliable. Good, because it's not going to be very fast. So. Buff Del Campo says that when he was in high school in 1936, they had to do a valve guide knurling.
They had to make a knurler and then do the valve guide with it.
That's it.
They showed him how to make a knurler out of an old drill bit.
I say that I'm kidding, but as time goes on, there's less of this old school stuff that gets taught to people, right? I remember by the time that I went to tech school for automotive, literally they took a quadrajet and they handed it to me on the front row and said, here, check this out and pass it down. And I did. I looked at it. I said, it looks like a quadrajet. And I passed it down. And literally, that's 100% of the carburetor that we covered.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, and the sad part is, even when John and I were in high school, they were already doing away with like auto shops and stuff like that, where you teach you crafts, right? I grabbed a hold of as many of them as I could on my way out the door from high school. I had already met all my requirements, and in my junior and senior year, I just loaded up with all these electives so I could boost my grade point average. And luckily, they had some cool ones. I had metal shop, wood shop, welding, small engines, agri-power mechanics. They did not have auto shop, right? So I took an electrical wiring course too. But I grabbed as many of them as I could on the way out the door, because I figured those are all skills that you can put in your pocket, right? Learning about Susan B. Anthony, not something I'm going to put in my pocket and care about later. So, but Michael Schmidt says, I think the knurling is a waste compared to adding a liner. I think a liner will last much longer. A liner will last much longer. Here's the downside to the liner. I can knurl a guide faster than you can go get a liner. and I'll be done, and I'll have it back together and on the engine before you even pull in the driveway.
You could knurl it for you. You can have the old one reamed out.
Yeah. Okay.
Rob Ward is asking an interesting question. Can you think of any current YouTubers who utilize shim stock? These are interesting arts here.
Are you talking about like spring shims?
That's what I'm thinking.
That's what I'm thinking too. And he's talking about like valve spring shim stock. And if you go back and look at the very first video I did for Mr. Rodder's Neighborhood, I was making my own set of rockers, and nobody made anything to fit a Buick, the stuff that I was dealing with. And I shimmed all those rockers with valve spring shims. But
I was talking about valve springs with Just Mopar Joe here a couple days ago, just randomly, and he said, "Oh yeah, these springs had 1,000 passes on them and shimmed 3 times."
They always come out good.
Oh, he's talking about for shimming rod bearing. Man, Ron Ward is talking about all of this
old school stuff,
ancient old school stuff.
No.
Ron,
I bet you Cold War motors, bearings. The leather bearing, the leather shoe trick, the leather belt trick, actually, where you cut the leather belt down. And wasn't it the Stove Bolt 235 Chevrolets that had the leather bearings in them?
Ron, I'll tell you who you might talk with.
Cold War motors.
No, well, Turbo Tom. Tom and his brothers, I think, did new bearings in the Model T before they brought it to Sykeston last year. So that's who you would talk with, is Turbo Tom 416. And he's usually in here. His channel is on my page as No Name 500 alumni. Oh my gosh.
When was the last time I poured Babbitt bearings? Exactly. Never.
Well, Tom did it last year. They did it last summer in the Model T before they brought it to Sykeston.
And just heated up some leather and poured it in there?
They poured new bearings, yes.
And you know what's funny is like one of the cheapest things I've ever heard about was an article I found about spudering, and it was written by Henry Ford himself. And he was fixing cracked blocks at his dealerships. They would spuder the block. And what they would do is they'd put flux in the cracked part of the block and then take a penny and file it till you had copper shavings. And then you would shove it into the groove wherever, you crack. And with the flux, and you would hit that sucker with a torch till the copper melted, and it would essentially just wick right into the pores of the cast iron, and it would be good to go.
You know what this reminds me of is in that movie Escape from Alcatraz, when Clint Eastwood's character said, "How can I weld something together in prison?" And they taught him the method. You take a silver dime and a toenail file, and you get some shavings and a whole book of matches to get it hot enough. And you literally silver weld your spoon to that piece for digging your way through the wall. I thought that was pretty wild.
Yeah.
Tom Brown's asking about your opinion on valve seals. Any benefits to not running valve seals? I know an 89 Hyundai Excel right from the factory doesn't have them at all from the factory.
All the early Buicks didn't have them.
Yeah.
Even the 300s up until 66 didn't have them. They smoke at startup, generally, is what you see. But I don't think there's any benefits to removing them whatsoever. I think they last longer. Now, what I have found is there is newer style valve seals that have they're like a Teflon style seal, and you literally have to put those on a certain way or they will damage. And they put like 1,000th of an inch of oil, 360 degrees, as long as they have a good oil supply on top. It's like what they use on the newer style LS stuff, but you got to have your guides cut at the top to fit those new seals.
I have got to look this up and see this. So 38 POS Racing says that license plates used to be leather in Nebraska. And it looks like I've found one on a search here. Pre-1915, They did leather license plates
Sweet.
in Nebraska.
So he's
That
saying,
is
besides the
wild.
smoke, will this help prolong the valve? It may prolong the valves, but if you've ever taken a Buick apart that eats the guides like all of them do, there will be black caked on crap all around the valve. That is your oil. So it may prolong it because it encases and mummifies the valve, but it doesn't help with anything. That's for dang sure.
Dust Devil Brian is running AN radiator hose, -16 stuff. You ever done any of your cooling system with AN there, Dallas?
My cooling system?
Yeah, with
No.
AN.
No,
I
I've
know a
seen
lot
it.
of people who have.
I've seen it done, and there's a cheap way to do it, and I guess the right way to do it. But the cheap way is like where your outlet's at, cut the end off, and then put two like 10 AN fittings on there right next to each other, and
Yeah.
just run two 10 AN lines.
Yep.
I've seen that done. I've seen the one that's the absolute correct AN fitting for a radiator, and I mean that's got to be like a 22 AN fitting. I bet that fitting costs $350.
It would
Just
be a
fitting.
yeah, no, it would be a
So you guys got it kind of easy these days with all the
would be a
Chinese
20.
fittings.
It would be a 20. That's 1.25 inches, right?
Yeah, it probably is a 20. That sounds
Yeah.
about right. But I mean, that fitting is probably $300. There's no way around that. And then you got to get one for the other side.
No.
Me, I'm the worst guy to ask about stuff like that. See, I take exhaust tubing and cut it up, and I'll paint it with silver paint and
So
stick
there
that
you
in.
go.
Put
There's
two rubber ends on it.
There's an Earl's for 144 and a Jegs for $40.
Oh, there you go. See, and that's
Yeah.
that's why I was saying you're winning when you're talking like the Chinese fittings today, because they're cheap.
Yep.
Those fittings used to be about like $15-$16 a whack. And they were all made in the United States out of billet aluminum.
Fab Race Mod repeats all over it. He says it's 20 or 22, run about $60.
Oh wow.
So Quick Rods Inc. is way behind us, I think, on the live. He's talking about getting pistons out of a bore. I'll tell you, the last one I did that on was a 350 Chevrolet, and it had water had been running down. Oh, look at that. Get my camera happy again. 350 Chevrolet had water been running down and got in number 5 cylinder. And what we did is we just poured some oil down in the intake and worked it back and forth. And we were getting a little bit more movement on the breaker bar each time. Came right out. Look at Dakota's comment there at 8:33.
I got my dad to fix my cross-threaded transmission line for the radiator. He took a fitting with a different thread pitch and just jammed it. No leaks.
Well,
hey, isn't that what they call the hillbilly Loctite? I think that's what they call it.
I won't. I'm not saying this with pride, but I will certainly admit it. When I was a teenager, I had some stripped out intake bolts on a small block Dodge, and you can put a 10 millimeter right in there, and you can just muscle it down. I don't know if it'll come out with much, but it'll go in and stay.
I've done some hackery like that.
I wasn't fluent in helicoils then, so.
Well, that's the proper way to do it.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Way back when, before we got all these sophisticated engines, I mean, I had crap with carburetors all the way up through I graduated from high school, right? So like, let's see, I had the 81 Regal, but my dad had this 79 Monza with a V6 Buick in it, and I would drive that sometimes and get pretty decent mileage doing whatever I was doing. And that thing was funky because it had a front wheel drive 3.8 liter V6 in it. And the early 3.8s, when you had a front wheel drive one, had a 14 bolt pan, and the earlier ones had like a, or I mean, the earlier ones that were rear wheel drive were like a, maybe I'm saying that backwards. It was 14 bolt pan for the stock one, and then 20 bolt pan or something like that for the front wheel drive ones. And they had like a weird looking triangular timing cover on it. He had that in that Monza, and we had to make an oil pan. So we just took, it's a Buick V6. They're virtually the same pan, and then just cut the base off one, welded it on the other one. And voila, you now got a rear wheel drive 21 bolt pan or whatever it is. And, but that thing, it would leak out the timing cover pretty bad, almost always, like every Buick. And I remember cranking the bolts on that timing cover on the oil pump so tight that you could actually hear them singing and with like making this weird noise, like after you tighten them. And then the brake, if you went one turn tighter, it'd be like freaking brick off. But,
Colleen's looking for a 68 block. You're not trying to do the 68 318 block stuff, are you?
I think the quick rods, it must be my buddy from Illinois. I think that's a guy named Dwayne Wilson. Not sure. That's the only guy I know of, though, that's this quick rod.
Quick Rods Inc.
Yeah, he used to have it on every car he had that on his license plate. So quick rod 1, quick rod 2, quick rod 5.
This is interesting. So 38 POS Racing says one trick for loosening up a stuck engine in old tractors is have it in high gear loaded on a trailer with the chains loose, and the rocking loosens it up.
Huh.
That's pretty slick. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And it just slowly pushes against it, right? All the time?
Exactly, because it's rocking back and forth, and it's the same thing I was doing with the braking bar, but he's just doing it with the vibrations of the road.
Yeah.
Pretty smart. 38 POS Racing. He knows some stuff now. That guy, he knows a lot of stuff.
Huh. Well, dang, we're nearing
We're getting close.
We're almost there, yeah.
Colleen's got someone looking for 68 289. Oh yeah, I have no idea on that.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
See, this is why I don't restore numbers matching crap. I've been restoring my dad's numbers matching 1970 GS Stage 1 for like 6 years now. Yeah. I'm getting nowhere. And it's like, okay, I'd rather have the oil pan with the bigger sump on it than the factory one.
Here's the biggest thing about numbers matching. The car show guys with the white socks and the hat with the year of the car on it, they can come up to you and tell you with great authority how you didn't do stuff right if you have a numbers matching car.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's see. I don't go to car shows anyway. I think I told you that. I went to a car show one time, and this dude just tore my car all up.
I have the fender tag for the Dart Sport right here, so that I can have the right numbers and then still have people tell me that they're wrong, because I don't have any of the original stuff.
Huh.
How long will it be before somebody sees this and say, this car came with a 727 and you put a 904 in it? How long will that take?
25 seconds. Dude, I'm telling you, I went to a car show one time and the guy tore me up and made me feel like this tall, right? Like, why would you put headers on this thing? It's a 350. Why didn't you just put a 455 in here? It's not really worth it. It's a Skylark Custom. Why would you keep a 350 in it when you could put a 455 in there? And it's like, man, you know what? You buy the fucking car from me and build it the way you want it, right? Otherwise, it's mine.
You know what? One of the best lines I ever heard at a car show was old fella I know here on YouTube. Somebody came up to him and said, that car sounds like it needs a tune-up. He says, so do you, and drove off.
About to tune him up, huh?
That's right. No, Dust Devil wants that fender tag you can get that says that Galen Govier has certified this to have no matching numbers. No numbers match. That's a good tag.
Yeah, see, Chris Cox says I quit doing the car show thing when I got asked to leave a car show because the factory installed tailpipes on my Cyclone, exited in the wrong place.
You know what happens when you leave your transmission done at the builder too long?
It gets sold.
No, it won't. It might get sold, but it starts getting spider webs on it.
Where is Mr. Cope? Oh,
Cope,
904 for you.
Should I show him? Should I show him what happens after that? How it gets down the road? Yeah. So that's what happens when it sits there too long, and then this is how it gets to its destination eventually. It has to hitchhike with the spider webs.
With Pee-wee on the greatest adventure ever.
I saw that. I almost fell out of my chair.
All right. Well, everyone's pretty non-talkative tonight.
Yeah.
Let's see. Dakota's saying he had an old quadrojet that had dust and spider webs on it 5 years ago. I just stuck a wire down the fuel line to clean the dirt out and put it on the 400. It functions perfectly, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
You know, I don't know if I told you this. 2 years ago, I was at the Buick Nationals. This guy just dropped off like this. Everything from his garage he didn't want. He brought it to the Nationals, put it up for sale, right? And literally, I had a dump truck pull up there and like beep, beep, beep. You know, all this stuff was just in a pile. Yeah. And all these guys came running over there and they're just kind of scattering stuff out, going through everything. And I walk up and there's 2 quadrojets sitting there. And I turn one over and it's like it's a Chevrolet model. I don't know if you know anything about quadrojets because they all have like, there's 2 different outlets, right? And it's based on where the fuel pump is at.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Chevrolet, the fuel outlet comes out and goes to the passenger side of the engine because that's where the fuel pump is. Yeah. Same thing for an Oldsmobile, right? But a Buick and a Pontiac come out front. They come out straight.
I never even paid attention to that, but I know they do that, but I never even thought about which cars have it. I know Holly has it off either side.
See, I don't know crap about Hollies. I don't. And that's because of just what I'm telling you now.
Yeah. The double pumpers are like that. You can
run
your line either side.
I turned this one over and it's one of them is a Chevrolet one, right? And then I turned the other one over and I'm like, man, it's got the straight outlet on it, but it's got these weird notches in the secondary doors. And I'd never seen that before. And I started thinking about it, and then it had up front, it had this weird bulbous looking nipple thing on it. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And then it dawned on me what I was looking at. And it's like, that's a Super Duty quadrojet from off of Pontiac, right? And so I told the guy, I said, hey man, you shouldn't be selling this as like for $50. It's not just some Buick junk carburetor, it's a Super Duty 455 Pontiac piece, right? And he's like, oh, all right. So then he takes it home. It's worth like $1,000.
Yeah.
I should have just bought the thing and shut my mouth.
But that's what you get for being honest.
But yeah, I must have told that story then before because Dakota's saying 455 Super Duty quadrojet. Colleen, I haven't reopened any of that stuff yet because I don't know what I'm doing yet. You can pay your dues when I reopen it up. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, and I don't know when my divorce is going to be over with. I don't know if I'm going to have a pot to piss in afterwards or where I'm going to live, but that's what I'm waiting on. I'm not going to do the AHRA until I have something figured out. Let's see. Dallas, did you see Chris Birdsong is putting a 215 Buick in his Duster? I just got here, so if you guys already talked about it, no, I haven't. I didn't know anything about it, and I don't even know who Chris Birdsong is. Is he a YouTuber?
Yeah, he's a YouTuber that normally works on chargers and stuff, but apparently he's putting a Buick in a Duster because it's click some views and stuff. So good for him.
And the Buick small block is like the most versatile and easy thing to engine swap, because the oil pump is on the front of the engine, so it's on the front by literally by the harmonic dampener. So you don't have to worry about the pan. They'll fit in almost anything. Let's see. Tom, he showed it on his Instagram page today. He'll make a video eventually. Let's see. Dakota's saying, look up Junker Up. I really like his videos. I've never seen him. Well, trust me, I'd love to renew your membership and get this thing going, but and I appreciate you being concerned about it, but right now I don't know where I'm going to be living in 6 months, so I couldn't tell you. He's doing it because it's 30 pounds lighter than the Slant 6 coming out of it, and it's 10 cubic inches less. And I don't see his gain, though, because when he goes to find out that there's one bell housing and that's for a manual transmission option, and it's $600 for that one bell housing, he'll probably steer clear.
It's content. I mean, it's content. Wow, 38 POS Racing says that the 455 Buick fits reasonably well in a Vega.
Well, if it fits a small block Chevrolet, it'll fit a 455 Buick.
Yeah.
The only difference between the 455 and the Chevrolet small block is 25 pounds.
I saw a Vega wagon running around in town today in hot rod black, and it looked good. It was a nice one.
Did it sound good?
It did. It did. The only thing I didn't like about the outside of this car is he painted the door handles black. Everything else still had the chrome and everything, but he painted the door handles black. I'm like, oh, just it needed that. It was bugging me, but the car looked good. It sounded good. Even ran factory wheels.
Colleen saying I can come bunk with her. She's got a spare room, no garage though. Yeah, but don't tempt me. Might end up throwing me out. I know a guy had a 455 Buick laying uncovered in his yard. Oh yeah, where's that? I'm specialized in that kind of crap.
Oh man, so when I was at New River Community College, they used to have people come in and donate stuff. Guess they got a tax write-off out of it. And this guy came in there, and at lunchtime, and he backs his truck up to the bay door, jumps up in the bed, drops the tailgate, and he takes a 460 Ford and just rolls it off the tailgate onto the concrete floor of the shop. I mean, he rolled it over the distributor, the carburetor, valve covers, oil, everything was getting crushed as it went onto the floor. And then our teacher said, hey, man, we got to get that thing out of there. You can't pull a car in this bay or anything. So one of the guys proceeds to go and get the crane. And he had a couple of little tiny, like 1/4-inch bolts that he found to thread into this. And he picks his, 750-pound engine up, backs his Dakota under it. And no sooner than the truck stops, one of those bolts breaks, the engine just falls into the bed of the truck and crushes a huge dent in the bed, right?
Sure, yeah.
Then he takes, I still remember that poor truck. It was white, and I don't know how there was any synchros left in the transmission the way he drove. But anyway, then he goes out, and I asked him about a month later, I say, what'd you ever do with that 460? He said, I took it out to this field where we live, and he put it in the middle of the field, upside down with no oil pan on it, and that was it. and just let it get rained in. I'm like, wow, I mean, that's like the most thorough way to destroy an engine I've ever seen. What all these people did, but what a
Yeah, well, that
waste.
sounds pretty dumb.
Yeah.
But Tom Brown says I may have one of those 215 manual bell housings. Did I say that out loud? Oops. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
The cool thing about it is you can buy one of those manual bell housings from D&D, D&D Speed, I think, in like Michigan. It's aluminumv8.com. And the cool thing is you can put a T5 on one of those. So you could have a T5 5-speed, behind a 215 V8 aluminum Buick. And it's actually kind of a cool idea because, I mean, the powertrain wouldn't weigh crap.
So, Dakota, the answer is yes. If it's been sit out in the yard for 2 years, yeah. But the thing is it may have tripled the machine bill by sitting out like that.
Yeah, the water does some serious damage to cast iron.
Oh yeah, that's the problem. Is it savable? Oh, certainly. But I mean, you might be spending thousands in machine work to do so now.
Yeah. And the sad part is the Buick 455 doesn't have a lot of block to rust away. So they're virtually like just one step away from a cast iron frying pan, right? There's not a lot of freaking metal in them.
Dust Devil Brian is correctly pointing out that we have 147 days, 2 hours, and 7 minutes until the third annual AHRA No Name Nationals. So
this is going to be the big one.
Just saying. Yeah, Dust Devil Garage is going to go down the track.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to be going down the track. I don't even know if I'll have a race car by then.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will.
We'll see what happens.
Let's see. Does the 215 Buick and Olds use the same bell? Yes, they do, and they actually use the same short block. Oh yeah. Well, rainwater does an engine bad. Mouse pee is much worse. Yeah.
Wow.
Mouse pee. I got a motor that I call the rat piss motor, and it was a big block Buick that literally somebody had rebuilt and stuck it in their garage, and it was sitting on an engine stand for like 20 years. And this guy, my buddy here in Murfreesboro, bought it, and he brought it over. Hey, can you go through this thing? I can't get it to turn. It's supposed to be rebuilt. Well, I ended up taking it apart. And all the lifters were rusted into the bore where you couldn't move them. I had to do an old small block Chevrolet mushroom lifter trick where you turn the engine upside down, you take the crank rods and pistons and everything out, and then you get to the cam and you knock the lifters out with like a piece of wood is what I used, but I got them out.
Oh yeah.
And then the cam was still frozen in its bore where the piston just run all over it to the bearings and then just literally corroded the bearings to the camshaft. But I got the cam out. I cleaned it up. I even soaked the lifters in oil and brushed and cleaned them up real good. And I honed all the lifter bores with a wheel cylinder honed. And the damn thing ran.
Mushroom lifters. Man, you don't hear about those things much anymore at all, do you?
No, that was our generation where we... Hey, man, we got to do a cam swap on my 305. Like, okay, cool, buddy. I'll give you a hand. And you go over there and you're like, why the fuck one of these lifters come out like a quarter of an inch? And then you find out that in 1977 through like 1981, Chevrolet made their camshafts out of used aluminum foil balls. And actually the lifters, actually both of them. Because the cams, usually when you took them out, they'd have no lobes left on like half of them. And then the lifters would mushroom so bad it looked like you took an old chisel and just beat on it for an hour and mushroom the head, right?
Wow, Tom Brown is saying that the stock 215 in 61 was 315 pounds dressed and full of oil. Wow.
That's correct. Yep. They actually had a picture of that they did for a promotional that had a seesaw. And it had a 215 Buick on one side and this skimpily clad bikini wearing chick on the other side, and she was pushing it down.
Huh.
It was a freaking cool ad. And they are super duper light. But the cool thing is It was 215 cubes, and in 63, you could have got it with a 4-barrel and high compression, and it had 205 horse
Wow.
and weighed 315 pounds. That's the cool part
315.
about it. Yeah, it's a good motor. It's what ended up becoming the Brabham Formula One engine.
That wouldn't even be hard to pick up and move, really.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Repco. It was the Repco V8. That's what it was. Yeah, no, you could pick that up probably as a complete engine off the ground. But a 302 Ford weighs more than that, but not a lot.
Yeah. A small block Chrysler dressed and everything is about 528.
Yeah, I found out a small block Chevrolet is like that too, because I tried
Right
to pick
about
it up just like a small block Ford.
Yep.
You about damn near killed 2 people trying to pick it up.
Yep. Big block Ford is crazy heavy.
I don't know. I know they got heavier and heavier. There's a reason why they called that Hemi the elephant.
Yeah.
Because it's up there like 700-800 pounds.
I'll say that 215 literally weighs half what a big block does.
Yeah.
Half.
Well, like I said, the big block Buick, the 455 Buick, weighs 25 pounds more than a small block Chevrolet. See, Buick got forced to test the thin wall casting at General Motors in 61. And that was the 215 Buick. So they did the thin wall aluminum casting. And then when they decided they were no longer going to run the 215 in 63, so 64 would have been the first year without it, they made the 300, which was literally just a cast iron version of that 215. And the neat thing is the 300 has all of the ribbing and stuff on it like you would a 215 on a cast iron block. So it makes the cast iron block capable of like 800 horse, which is more than the engine can make.
Levi wants to know what's the most power someone's made a 215. Do you know, Dallas?
I do not know that number for sure, but I do know that Mickey Thompson used that same exact 215 engine for his IndyCar program in 1962, and they made 420 horsepower with it on methanol.
There you go.
Yeah, but they also stroked it out to like 274 cubes.
Dust Devil, that is correct. Those things are not light. Big block Chevy heads.
Yeah.
I do like a big block Chevy, though. Those are great engines. I like them a lot.
I always used to hate on the small block Chevrolet so much. Like, I used to say when I was a kid, like, everybody built one, right? Everybody had one. And I'd say, my mom could build one of those in a sandbox that runs 9s, right? I mean, they're that easy to make go fast. And then here I was with just junkyard factory stuff. I couldn't get my stuff to run 12s.
Just from an aesthetics thing, I love how the big block Chevy has the Siamese intake ports, and it'll have the symmetrical on the exhaust, which is really weird, right?
Right.
Usually it's both, but not on that. I always thought that was cool about them. Yeah, it's a great looking engine. I agree, Clint.
I think one of the best looking engines out there, like when you start looking at aesthetics for an engine, any of the Hemis, they look good. A big valve cover with the spark plug in the middle. Okay. You got your shotgun Fords, your 429s. You look at a FE, like an FE with like 427 with the 2 4-barrels just looks so bitchin' because it's like one carburetor is lower than the other one, right? Yeah. And they're at like an angle.
Yeah.
It looks so cool. And then the Nailhead Buick, just a sexy engine.
And now they put these giant plastic covers over engines because people don't want to see them when they raise the hood.
Right. It's just so sad. Yeah, that used to be as much of a selling point was the aesthetics of the engine.
Oh yes.
I have a couple sets of 1967 Buick 300 valve covers, and the coolest part about them is they have the spark plug holder or spark plug wire holders welded to the side of the valve cover, right? And then they're coated in like this plastic stuff, and they would put your plugs, and they would run lengthwise on the bottom of the valve cover, and they came factory like that. Right? I've never seen anything else that has something like that.
Dakota said they should make the new engines look like Gen 2 Hemis. No, because then you would have people putting them in the older cars.
Oh, yeah, you're right. W block Chevys, the 348 409 is a good looking engine.
Those are good looking engines. I agree.
Boss valve covers look great too. You're talking about a cleaver?
No doubt.
Yeah. Well, I tried to make mine look like an FE. It looked like an old school FE style. But hey, folks, that's been 2 hours now.
Yeah. So it flew by tonight.
Yeah, it went down. It did go by really quick. Dust Devil Garage says Nailhead is a beautiful engine, but they don't. The sad part is they just don't run hard, right? They're just like they're good. They got sexy on the corner. Everything else, okay. But that's it for tonight, folks. We're out here. It's been 2 hours. I loved tickling your gray matter if we did. And I want to thank John for coming on here last minute for me. So it wasn't just me here trying to entertain you for 2 hours. And I can only dance a jig for so long.
It's been a lot of fun. I thank you for having me on as a guest host, filling in for Andy. And I guess Professor P will be back on Wednesday.
He should be back this Wednesday. Yep.
Excellent. Well, hello, Miss Katie, just sliding in here at the last minute. Good to see you.
Rick Salmon just got in here too.
Yeah.
So,
well, anyway, it's been a blast. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you guys next week.